talk about my favorite team, the Houston Rockets, real quick, because they got the number 3 overall pick after having technically the best odds. I understand that. I believe the top 3 or top 4 all have the same exact odds to get the number 1 overall pick, but they were guaranteed to get a top 5 pick, and they get the median of the group, really. They get the number 3 overall pick. And I want to talk about a couple things before I get into really not like the draft prospects. This is going to be much different than the Kings video because it's going to be more of me complaining-ish of like what could potentially happen with all the rumors that have been swirling around with the Rockets recently, and some of the roster moves that I would kind of want to make that are kind of being hindered because of the 3rd overall pick. Because I would say, like, for the most of this video and a lot of what I'm going to talk about is basically the Rockets would be getting Paolo Banchero. I know there's reports that Jaden Ivey could potentially slip into that number 3 slot. I would be a little more confused by that. I don't know if they don't believe in KPJ. I understand Kevin Porter Jr. did have some moments this year where he quit on the team. That's the best way I could put it. He basically left the locker room, left the arena after having some sort of beef with whether it's an assistant coach or minutes or something going on. There's been a lot of drama that has been focused on Kevin Porter Jr. with the Rockets throughout this season, some frustrations. And so maybe you want to go get the next point guard of your future with Jaden Ivey. And if that's the case, then so be it. I would love Jaden Ivey. I think he's a fantastic ball player. He's the best guard in this draft. But I also love Paolo Banchero. And I think Paolo Banchero, for the most of this video, is what I'm going to assume is slotted into that power forward / wing position that the Rockets need. I understand he's 6'10". He's technically, we want to call him a big man because of his size and his frame. And his mobility on offense is fantastic. But the biggest problem I have, and it's the first part I'll talk about in this video, is the Christian Wood complex. I get it. The Rockets had a bargain of a deal for Christian Wood, and Christian Wood has played fantastic for the Rockets at times. Now, there's a lot of things when you don't watch Rockets games all the time like I do, like I suffer through all the time, and I'm in those Twitter spaces. There's a consensus with Christian Wood that, yes, he is on a really solid deal. Yes, he is a really solid offensive player at times, and I think he would be better on a championship team as a potential 3rd or 4th option. I don't know if he's a guy that you want to have as your top 2 guy going into a playoff contention. I understand. I believe he's only 27, so he's not like on an older side, but I think he's just getting into his prime. And whatever his ceiling is, I think he's kind of met. And I think the problem that I have with Christian Wood is I did want him to get traded. I want to make that very clear. I do think he should get traded, but because they got the 3rd overall pick, they're not going to be able to bring in a guy like Jabari Smith, who I think is a much better defender, as well as Chet Holmgren, who was my dream pick, because I feel like Chet could fit that role of being a center that can play some defense. Now, the Rockets also have Alperen Sengun, who is also a center that is most likely, he should get some more minutes this upcoming season. I fully believe that he's going to get a lot more minutes, which slides Christian Wood to his natural position of power forward. But then you have Banchero now at the 3, which is a weird fit to me. I do think Christian Wood could easily still get traded. I think him and Sengun, Paolo Banchero and Sengun would be a fantastic backcourt, but it would still lack some defensive identity, as Sengun is still trying to get used to being a lot quicker on his feet, a lot more, I would say, laterally quick, as well as Banchero has shown flashes to be a good defensive anchor at times. I wouldn't say he's the guy that you want to lean on the most, and it would leave the Rockets a lot more like they were this year, where they were decent offensively, but a train wreck defensively. Even if they had Christian Wood on the roster, Christian Wood's the worst defender on the Rockets roster. I'm convinced that. Because of his inability to consistently be good on offense, he has some flashes where he plays like Kevin Durant level shots. I mean, I can think of a time when he literally pulled up from 40 feet like it was Curry, like it was nothing. But there's times where he kind of goes a little tunnel vision where he's not going to pass out of the shot. There was many times before Jalen Green was really getting into a rhythm of things where he kind of got a tunnel vision where he was just like, all right, I'm going to go get a bad shot. And it was a bad shot attempt and a bad possession overall for the Houston Rockets. And I think the Rockets now know they got to go all in with Jalen Green. that's your number one guy. When you know that you have a number one guy, you have to build around him. And I don't know if Christian Wood is a guy that you want to have on the same roster as Jalen Green, especially when you have a bunch of other mouths that you want to feed and develop, such as Sengun, such as Kevin Porter Jr., if you end up keeping him. And then you would have another offensive-centric guy in Paolo Banchero. I think it would be a lot easier to move off of Christian Wood if we were able to get a guy like Chet Holmgren, because you would now have a defensive identity. And I think Sengun and Chet would be a fine backcourt to really have an upgrade defensively. That's the biggest thing I want from the Rockets this year, is some upgraded defense. We have reports of Jalen Green. He came out onto the Bill Simmons podcast, which shout out to Jalen Green for doing that. Bill Simmons had Herb Jones ahead of him in the all-rookie team, and that caused a lot of controversy between Rockets Twitter and Bill Simmons, and a lot of things happened. And to have Jalen Green to go on that podcast and basically talk to him, even though Bill Simmons did not apologize for any of the comments after cussing him out, I respect Jalen Green for what he said. And he had mentioned that he is bulking up this summer. That's one of the biggest things that he was mentioning throughout the entire podcast, is the dude's trying to gain a lot more muscle, because the dude's an athletic freak anyways. If he's able to body somebody and be able to, I'm saying on the defensive side of the ball, be laterally quick enough to be able to stay with somebody but not get bodied, because there was times when a bigger guard could easily get into position wherever they wanted to get into on Jalen Green. If Jalen can upgrade defensively, now the backcourt has to keep up with that, because Kevin Porter Jr. is one of the most underrated defenders on that team, as well as potential sixth man of the year, Josh Christopher, which I'm going to point that out real quick. But I don't love Christian Wood's fit for the future. I don't have a trade package that I would kind of pair with. You could go with the later first round pick that the Rockets have. They do have two of them. I want Tari Eason from LSU, but I didn't really have enough time to do enough research for that later round pick. I'm basically talking about number 3. But I want to talk about how Paolo Banchero fits with the Houston Rockets roster after most likely Eric Gordon gets moved off of, and in a world where Christian Wood potentially gets moved off of as well. Paolo Banchero, I think, is a fantastic fit offensively, because when we look at his tape on Duke, the dude is able to pass out of very tough positions all the time. That's a great thing to do. He is consistently able to make great passes out of tough positions for his frame. I think that's the most underrated part of his game, and that's something that the Rockets could love to have. Another playmaker to be able to get the best shot possible. There was a lot of times when you had Garrison Matthews creating his own shot, and then Eric Gordon would have his random isolation plays, and that's something that you just don't want to have consistently for the Rockets. It's nice, but it's kind of like handing the ball to Jay Crowder and saying, hey, go make your own shot, and that's just not something you want to have consistently on the Rockets. I understand that the Rockets right now, if they get Paolo Banchero, they're not going to be that much better defensively going into next year. But I really think offensively they could be one of the most exciting teams. But at one point, do the Rockets try to actually start playing winning basketball, start winning games? I understand that they have a lot of young talent. They have one of the best young cores in the entire league. It's the same thing that I think about when we talk about the Thunder is, when do we start to have expectations for this team? When do we start expecting them to actually start to compete? I understand you want to get the number 1 overall pick, and I understand there's a French center that is probably one of the greatest prospects I've ever seen in Wemby that a lot of teams are going to try to go for. But at what point do the Rockets say, hey, we want to be like the Grizzlies, we want to be like potentially, I don't know, the Hawks or the Mavericks, and you have these young stars that you want to really, hey, let's go win some games. Because if you want to build a winning culture, actually, and I haven't even talked about Stephen Silas, I don't even want to get into that, because I don't really love Stephen Silas as head coach, but this is a year where I feel like he needs to prove that he can play winning basketball, or like get these guys motivated to really buy in defensively. I understand that they are revamping the entire assistant coaching section. They still have John Lucas, who is really connecting with these young guys and trying his best to develop them as quickly as possible. And I'm not saying the expectation should be play-in, but the expectation should be at least significantly better than the worst record in the league. And that just might be me missing a winning basketball team to root for, but I truly think that, yes, I'm very grateful to have the 3rd overall pick, and I understand having one of those top 3 guys is huge for any franchise. I'm sure the Pistons, and I'm sure for sure the Kings would love to get a guy like Jabari Smith or a Chet Holmgren or someone like that. I'm grateful for that. But I at one point, I want to ask the question, if you're a Rockets fan, or even a Thunder fan, or hell, even a Magic fan, at what point do you start to expect your team to really become better? because you don't want to be one of those teams like the Knicks, who is always in the lottery, always making desperate win now moves. Or do you want to go all in on this young team and say, hey, go try to win as many games as possible instead of tanking? Because it was clear as day that this became a tank fest between the top 3 teams. It really did. And it sucks because I don't want to see that from my team. I want to see them start winning games. And Jalen Green showed that he could be a number 1 option on a team. So I want to see if he can actually take this team maybe to a 10 seed. I wouldn't mind getting knocked out of the play-in. Give me something to root for. Unless I'm crazy and you would rather see them go 15 and, I don't know, 65, let me know what you would do. And thank you so much for watching. I know this video has been all over the place. I've been trying to get my videos a little bit more organized, but it's been a busy time. I just started a new internship, so it's been crazy. I haven't been able to record a ton, and I haven't been able to make any scripts, but I thought, you know what, I can go and vent about my Rockets for a while, and I will be making a Pistons video pretty soon, and another mock draft, and I got some football content coming up, and I got some projects in the works. But if you are new here and you like my content, I am trying to hit 1,000 subs by the end of this summer. It is a goal of mine that I've written in January. I really think we could do this. We're almost a third of the way there. Thank you so much for watching, and have a wonderful day.